All right, I'm here with Spencer Kupferman, the CEO of PKWARE, which is a enterprise data protection solution. They're around 150, 200 people. They're doing around 40 million in ARR with 40% operating margins, which is insane. And we'll definitely dive into that. But we'll dive into story and how he's grown the company and lessons, mistakes he's learning. So Spencer, thank you for joining me.
Finn, great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Love to share with the community of your listeners. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and just an honor to be here, and appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. Maybe first we spend a little time on kind of your story on how you joined PKWARE, because I know you joined in 2020 as the CEO. You didn't found this company. The company is actually, for a software or a tech company, old, I would say. 1986, the company was founded. But I chatted with your head of marketing, and she kind of said that you're in the family business of software companies, which is rare to hear because software companies are so young that people don't really say the family business is software companies. So maybe tell a little bit of like how you got into this business and your journey to eventually joining PKWARE.
Sure. I've been blessed because my father was a real visionary in the technology space dating back to the early 70s, Finn. Ron's his name, Ron Kupferman. So growing up in it, I was born right around that time, born in 73 myself. So really growing up in the business with my father, having opportunities to see things and experience things about the software space, not necessarily cyber. We were in the financial enterprise software space for many decades back in the day. And really just being able to be exposed to all different types of nooks and crannies of the software business. Neither myself nor my father are we're not technical visionaries. And so we're really more focused on the people and business aspects of operations of a software enterprise, and that being able to be inside that during those years, growing up in the summers, working, coming back and working for my father, doing everything from we used to be in the IBM. In those days, the name of the company was Global Software, and Global was, like I said, in the financial enterprise software space on the IBM mainframe back in those days. And so I go back to, I just remember being a little boy. I tell this anecdote a lot to our customers at PKWARE. Many of them are also mainframe customers. But I just remember being a little boy and then, going to the office on the weekend with my father and my siblings, and we're playing hide and go seek behind these mainframes that are like bigger than me. And so we go back that far, in the space, in the software space. Of course, software, the whole enterprise IT space in 1970 was maybe $50 million, maybe late 60s, 50 million with an M. It was really kind of mind boggling. Now it's half a trillion or whatever it is. It's absurd. So the transformation over that, half a century since I was born has obviously been really unbelievable. And so having a front row seat to that throughout my childhood, adolescence, and then, of course, after university, coming back, starting with working with my father in a very entry-level marketing sales role at making $30,000 a year in 1996. I thought he did a great job of bringing me along in a way that was respectful of my peers, and allowed me to gain my own respect, not only from my peers, but from myself in the space, and learn more.
He didn't bring you in as a VP right out of college.
No. Yeah, I was actually not even really, I was not working for him for many years. Actually, I worked for people well below my father. And the funny part of that was, at night we would go home together because I was living at home trying to save money. And this is in Raleigh, North Carolina, in those days. And so I would go home, and then at night, we'd have dinner or get dinner on the way back. And I would, sit there having been in the business for all but 3 hours and kind of say, hey, I don't know, what do you do? Why do you do this? Why does this guy work here? Why is this woman doing this? Why, what's this with this strategy? Why are we doing that? And he'd just kind of giggle and say, slow down there, buddy. You'll have your time, but it's not tonight. Just, focus on your chicken and rice, and let's go home and go back to work the next day. So many of those types of conversations over the course of, I've been in this business now 30 years since my university days. I went back, got an MBA in technology management, specifically in focus in technology. I thought that would be helpful to do that, allow me to earn even more credibility from my peers, to advance my education, and wanted to make a career of being a software executive like my father was, an entrepreneur, working in a family-run business, and just like I said, had a front row seat to so many different plays and moves and experiences.
How long were you with your father's company?
So that company, I ended up selling that company in 2016, and then in June of 2016, and I continued to run it we sold to the private equity firm who I still work with very closely, and who majority owner in PKWARE.
So at that time in 2016, you were CEO of that company?
Yes, I was.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes. At that point, my father had taken more of a chairmanship role in the business, and I was operating the business in a day-to-day capacity at that point when we were going through the sales process of selling global. And the reason that came about was my father was he was getting on in years, and I was really just starting to kind of feel my oats a little bit, and saw some opportunities for global for expansion, and to get bigger and better. And his position was, look, we're not, the whole family kind of lives off of this business here. So there's a quality of life issue at play. You want to kind of roll the dice here, and I understand that, but I'm ready to kind of cash some chips in. So the best way we can both have our cake and eat it too is if we go the private equity route and find a partner that you trust, who will allow you to run the business. They'll back you with, the capital you need to make some of these moves you want to make, and acquisitions and product growth, et cetera, in the roadmap, and do these things. And then you'll roll some of your proceeds from this first sale. And then you'll get a second bite of the apple that could, if you do things right, could potentially be much bigger, more impactful than your initial bite here. So that's exactly what we did, and went through that process, and we're really blessed to find Thompson Street Capital Partners, and who's been fantastic ever since. That was almost 10 years ago now, almost, and I've actually known them for actually almost 10 years. So yeah, I can't believe it's been a decade, but.
And then that's also how you found PKWARE. Were they the people who brought you into there?
Yes, they brought me in. Yes, Thompson Street brought me into, specifically the managing partner, Bob Dunn, brought me into, called me into PKWARE, and asked me to invest alongside them as a minority player, and then run it as CEO and be on the board, et cetera, and do that. And, I didn't have to think too hard about that one. That was an easy decision. And
why?
Because, for a couple reasons. One is, the concept of, making a financial success, if you want to call that, which global software, by all practical measures, was a fantastic outcome for the investors, for myself, for many of the operators.
Any number that you can share in terms of exit? Okay.
No,
that's all undisclosed.
But it was, but it was very, very successful. And really, how old was I? 40, that was 16. So maybe I'm low 40s, 42, 43, whatever. So I'm a young guy at that point, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got a little money here, and then we go, and 2 years later, we sell it again in June of 18, and continue to build on that nest egg. But the concept of kind of making like all this money and then sitting around and like sipping a pink drink on some exotic beach it's very overrated to me. And so I like to I like to work with people. I mean, love technology, but I'm not a technologist. I'm a people person, and love to build software businesses around people with really good technology, and then put people in positions to accomplish things they've never accomplished before. And then that way I get to look back and say, hey, I had a small little bit to do with this individual's success and their growth, and watching them climb a ladder that they've wanted to do for so many years. And so having the chance to do that again, and then do it with Bob and the Thompson Street team, you said, why did I want to do that? That was the first. The second reason was when you're lucky enough, as I am, to get to a point where you can kind of choose who you want to work with at that stage of your life, that was appealing to me, because I literally got to choose who I wanted to work with on that second tour with Thompson Street, and Bob and the team had empowered me to say, hey, if you can get the gang back together, great. Find some new people. We're supportive of all that, and I was able to find a number of people who took the global software journey with me, joined me again at PKWARE, who were back for another tour at PKWARE, and then being able to do it again alongside Bob Dunn, who I learned a tremendous amount from. He's been a mentor of mine in the private. I've learned so much about the private equity space, if you will, over the last decade from Bob. We were Thompson Street's, at that time in 2016, their largest and biggest technology software investment. So I like to think that, I was at the ground floor of the success, and really a trendsetter and leader of getting Thompson Street to a point where now, they're buying a ton of different in their portfolio, great, really healthy, awesome performing software companies. And I was really the first from that perspective for that size at that time. So that, that coupled with all that, and then again, being able to do it all over again with those people was attractive to me.
Right. So 150 to 200 people, round about 40 million in ARR, 40% operating margins. To me, that sounds very healthy, very, very healthy. Would you agree that sounds healthy?
Well, you could always look. There's always aspects. There's always aspects to your business that could improve, and the reality is it's hard. I mean, it's been hard. I mean, remember we acquired this business in April 13th of 20. So just go back and think about what was happening in April 13th. You just Google it. The world was totally paralyzed and shut down from the COVID situation. And we were not, the FaceTime and all that stuff, and the masks, and you weren't allowed to really see who you're working with, and you couldn't have the fly-by-water cooler conversations or the coffee talk. And it was a really difficult time to do business. And we were able to weather that as I'm coming in as a new guy and bringing in a new team, and to be able to weather all that and then get to where we are today, which puts us in a good position to continue to try to grow our business, which has been tough.
Just on that, did they bring you in April 2020? Was it that COVID hit and then everything that came with it, so something needed to change? Or was this all agreed upon before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hits and you come in and it's your first day and you're ready to roll, and then it's like, oh, by the way, you have to deal with the pandemic now? Which one was it?
Bob and the Thompson Street team have been in a process to acquire PKWARE. I want to call it probably since November of 19. So they had been working with them to acquire them. There were some competitive other acquirers trying to outbid each other, et cetera. And so as news started leaking about this virus that's apparently destroying the world and upending businesses and lives, we're like starting to think, I don't know, maybe the sellers might get cold feet, maybe they won't sell it, maybe they will, maybe they, so there was that there was a back and forth there where, one day I'd wake up and, I'd be on the phone and Bob would say, hey, I don't know if we're going to get it. The next day Bob would call and say, okay, yeah, I think we're going to get it. The next day he'd call and say, I don't know if we're going to get it. So there's just kind of going back and forth like that in the early days, January, February timeframe of 20. But then knowing by March, being pretty confident that they were going to close. And that was because remember, from the time we sold Global Software the second time in June of 18 until this deal, I'm working with Bob on the side. I'm helping diligence some companies. I'm sitting on a board of a couple companies, but not into my natural flow and routine of being a CEO and an operator, which is what I love to do. And so the prospects that this wasn't going to happen because of this terrible virus situation was really frustrating to even think about at that time. We were all frustrated. And so thankfully that happened. We knew we were going to close. And we were just trying to think to ourselves, okay, hey, what's the worst case scenario? We know this virus is here. The world is not going to come to an end, contrary to popular belief in whatever news media you're watching. It will not come to an end. And what are we going to do to kind of get through that time? And no one really knew it could take 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, 10 years, whatever. But we're going to get through it because we have mission critical software. And, we didn't really feel like people would just start like dropping the software because of COVID. I mean, that connection didn't really make sense. It was more about, hey, how much net new software can you sell? And if you only sold this much, are we still going to be able to kind of get through that and be, if there's a terrible recession, be somewhat, call it recession resistant, not proof, but recession resistant during this, or call it COVID resistant, whatever you want to call it. And we were able to do that. And so, that's kind of where our mentality was playing out literally on a whiteboard in Bob's office in St. Louis, kind of playing out what's the worst thing that's going to happen here from a performance perspective. And then what's that going to look like? And that's where we ended up. And that gave us gave Bob the confidence to close the deal, regardless of the situation with the virus and the world and the shutdown and the economy.
We're in this new era, I guess, of capital efficiency, right? I mean, you're not a VC-backed company, but lots of VC-backed companies, it was all about growth at all costs. And then things changed, right? Something called interest rates made an appearance. And people realized that they needed to do a lot more with a lot less and actually get to profitability and run an efficient company and not just bet on the fact that they can be losing money, but maybe sell for massive evaluation at some point. And clearly you figured something out with this company here. So I'm just curious how you think about capital efficiency and like what it takes to get there. What are maybe the pillars of running a profitable, capital efficient software company? Any thoughts on that come to mind?
Yes. It's a very good question. And the answer to that is that, private equity is really the opposite of venture capital. And you kind of outlined it. I'm just going to finish the rest of the sentence for you, which is the growth at all costs concept in the private equity space is not it's a totally different philosophy. The philosophy is that the investors, expect a certain return on their capital. There's a couple ways to get there. It's not just, hey, we grew 25%, 40%, but we're burning $4 million a year. That doesn't turn on the private equity investor as much as, hey, we're maybe high single digit, low double digit grower, and we're making 30%. We're making 40% on our money, margins rather, excuse me. We're running the business at 20, 30, 40% margins. And, we have some modest growth. We're not a unicorn. That concept is what you really focus on. The budget discipline, you call it the capital efficiency. And how do you do that? Well, there's no magic wand for it. You have to make some really tough decisions, especially in this very volatile market we've had in the last, just since COVID. You referenced it. You've got higher interest rates. You've got a lot of uncertainty in the market, and you've got wars burning down in different continents across the world. You got a lot of things that are creating in potential even more severe instability. You've got these terror attacks coming from Yemen into the into these sea lanes that are causing disruption of delivery of all different types of goods around the world and commerce, which is creating another economic stumbling block for the world to do business together and be connected. So there's all sorts of things happening. And all this, by the way, it's not like you get to call time out like in a sporting event and say, wait, let's not run our business for like 90 days. Let's see what happens. And then we'll pick it up at that point. You can't do that. You have to run your business throughout all of these, small detail. Got to run your business through the, 100-year pandemic. We've done all of that here, and we've had to we're not totally immune from having to make some of these tough decisions. We've made these tough decisions, and you have to, some of it is the concept of, it's a lifeboat scenario. You've got, you got X number of people. You picture, you talk about lifeboats. People start thinking about the Titanic, but you remember in the movie Titanic, people trying to get on the boat and people like pushing people off because it's going to sink the boat, and then everybody's going to die. And so obviously we're not that dramatic. We're running a business, we're not running a ship that's sinking in the North Atlantic. But the concept is there, and that is that I believe in my heart. Just I've seen tech businesses and been around them for 3 decades. Tech businesses overhire. It's just their nature. They just do it. They do it, and sometimes you can get away with it when in certain times you can do that, and in certain times you can't. And when you can't, you got to face the music, and you have to create those efficiencies where you can, in the interest of saving and prospering for the entire for the entirety of the business, not just a handful of people or a small group here or a group there, but rather your entire business. It's really about being able to make tough decisions that might be unpopular, but you're making them because you're making them in the interest of the investors and those that can still continue to work there and move on and put themselves in a position that when you get through this rough patch, you're able to rebuild. Because remember, it's not like when you create efficiencies, it's not like if the growth isn't there, it's this stuff you're hoping that it's temporary and you're able to fight through and get to some white space there, maybe in a different economic spot. And then boom, you're able to maybe rehire some of those folks. You're able to maybe get that growth that was eluding you because of the economic constraints of your space or the market in general. And things that are just out of your control. I think that's the other point, is that some things are just out of your control as an operator. And even though it's out of your control, Finn, it's your job as the CEO, as the leader of the board, whatever position you are, it's your job to find a way to get those efficiencies, regardless of what's happening around you, regardless of if you can control that environment or you cannot. And the only thing what you should do is you have to control what you can't control. And that's your business, your cabbage patch, your bailiwick. And sometimes that means making unpopular decisions.
I guess my question is, let's say you're the founder, you're the CEO of a VC-backed company, you're doing 5 million, you're doing 10 million ARR, and you're not profitable, right? You're losing money. Is it really just about swallowing the pill and saying, okay, we're going to lay off 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% of our workforce. We overhired, and now we're suddenly a capital efficient, growing, but more slowly growing company. That is it really just that in a sense? You need to lay off and do a RIF, or does it take a more fundamental shift in mindset and approach beyond just let's reduce team size?
Well, I mean, a riff in finding efficiencies and synergies, whatever you want to call it, is certainly part of it, but it's not all of it. You've really got to be able to look. You have to have a look at a bigger picture. It's not just about the personnel. It's about, is there another strategy we can employ during this period that can make us more efficiency in addition to our bottom line costs? Because remember, if I'm not getting it on the top and I'm not getting the growth because of a host of issues that we just talked about, I got to get it on the bottom, because eventually you got to match your revenues at some point in a business. You've got to match your revenues with your expenses. You got to. And to me, again, as a software operator for 30 years, I was never a huge fan of this, like, grow at all costs. I'm not a startup guy. That's not like not my expertise, not my thing. And that's because I don't feel a business is truly a viable success for its investors until you can prove you can make money at it. I mean, I don't know. It's a mundane thing to say. It's not that simple. But if it was so easy, everybody would do it. And the reality is everybody doesn't do it. And because they can't do it for whatever a gazillion reasons. So it's not just about, hey, let's here's 10 guys, 10 gals. We're going to get rid of them today. No, that might be part and parcel of an entire package, but you have to be ready to pivot.
What are maybe some of those big core areas that you would be looking at? Or if you would be coaching that founder right now, they would come to you and they're like, Spencer, I've already laid off 20% of my people. We're still not profitable. Yes, I can lay off another 20%, but I don't know. I feel like then we'll just cap growth completely, and what would the couple of specific areas or things you might go through or look at or first explore with them to figure out what the levers are?
Well, you got to look at product line profitability. If you in a lot of tech companies, there's multiple product lines, and that's great. And when things are going well, the concept of innovation is critical. When things aren't going well and you're not moving enough product, you got to look at a couple things. You got to look at product line profitability, and if the margins aren't there on a product line and you're in a dire situation, you got to look at that product line and potentially scrapping it, shelving it, and just focusing. And this gets to the concept, what I said at the beginning there, Finn, which is about, really doubling down on your strengths and not worrying about making your weaknesses mediocre, because that's all you're going to do at best. So if you've got weak product lines, stop wasting resources, cycles.
Would you literally close down that product and the revenue that comes with that product line?
It depends of the nature of the revenue and how sustainable it is, how easy it is to maintain. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But if I've got one product, for example, I got one product line that's killing it, okay, and then I've got another product line that's hobbling along, and sure, there's some revenue associated with it. I don't know that I kill it to the point where it doesn't exist. What I do is I put it in maintenance mode. Putting it in maintenance mode gives me a couple options, gives me the ability to still maintain the customers and make sure I'm getting the renewals, because that's critical to my cash flow, which investors love. And that's an important metric when you're dealing in a crisis time where growth and cash just isn't plentiful, and profitability is just not happening like that. And you've got some factors, like I said before, external factors are out of your control. So making sure that you're in a more of a maintenance environment where you can still do renewals, maybe some minimal upgrades to that product line. But I don't need all the innovation around it. No, I don't at this point. And if I've been running that product line for, whatever, 12, 24, 36, 48 months, and we're limping along here, I mean, come on, like, what are we going to wait another 10 years here? I mean, if either you're doing it or you get off the pot, either you're able to really demonstrate success with that product line or not. The other metric is is customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost me to get a customer? Now, you got to be at a minimum in software. I mean, you're at a minimum. It's got to be you pay $1, you get $1 worth of revenue, you get $1 worth of customers. If I'm paying $4 to get $1 worth of customers,
are you talking like ARR or LTV?
No, I'm saying ARR. If I'm paying $4, if I'm spending $4 in marketing, sales, commercial, whatever part of my business to capture to capture $1. That is not a sustainable approach to growing your business, to profitability, good cash flow, good margins. That's a train wreck. You're looking at, you peek your head out the window of the train and you're looking, and there's like the hole in the mountain where the train goes through. It's fully cement. Cement.
So you're saying
you're done.
If I have a 60K ACV, even though my customer might stay with me 2 or 3 years, you don't want to pay total maximum 60,000 to acquire that customer, so that you pay it back within the first year.
It's got to be at a minimum. It's got to be break even to make it sustainable. But ideally, you really want to pay. The greatest software companies in the world are pennies on the dollar for their acquisition cost, and maybe even in the negative. Maybe they're that good. So trying to drive that metric as low as you can you should always be mindful of that. You should be looking at that on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. That's a really important metric for a software company. Both of those are product line profitability and your customer acquisition cost. And not to mention your gross net retention. I mean, again, there's a ton of metrics that one looks at to run their business. But if you're asking me to look at, call it 2 important things here when I'm in that mode. This is the mode of trying to make it through a rough patch. We've got to do a riff. What else can we do here? What else am I looking at that's really telling me a picture about my business? Those are 2, you talked about specifics. Those are 2 specific metrics one should look at always, not just when things aren't going great, but when things aren't going great. If you look at those 2 metrics, it's going to tell you something very quickly.
And on CAC specifically, and I know this is going to be different for every company, but are there any patterns you've seen in terms of things that are generally a waste of money or that are inefficient that you would, if you make this analysis and you see, okay, this is how much they're spending on SDRs and DAE, and this is how much they're spending on Google Ads, and I don't know, like how would you evaluate like what to stop? And are there certain things that you feel like generally is where companies overspend that drives up their CAC?
I mean, I've seen a lot of things that I thought were wasteful over 30 years. I don't think you put your finger on one of them. It's not one thing that's always wasteful. There's a lot of different places and areas. When you're in that mode, it's, that you want the heads that are with you. The majority of them, if you can find a way to have them make you money, if they're really profitable heads, does that mean everybody else that's not all the QA people, they don't make you money? I mean, what are they? Are they wasteful? Of course not. They're really important. They do a really important job. So it's hard to put your finger on one thing. I mean, you mentioned Google AdWords. I mean, I've been in business before at times where I've thought, our spend in Google was just, it depends what kind of market you're in. If there's a lot of noise in a certain market, really hard to differentiate yourself in that Google game, and you can really end up running up the tab and having, again, show me the metric where there's a direct, quantitative connection between a Google AdWord campaign and an opportunity that came through and brought us revenue. If I'm not seeing that, that's really tough to get into big dollars on. It's really tough to justify for me, because I would rather spend in places where I know I can really move the needle whether it be, if there's, if we're doing, for example, some type of regional event where I can maybe get in front of 3 or 4 enterprise banks and spend 10 grand doing that, 20 grand doing that, as opposed to spending 10 grand in a week or a day on a Google ad that I can't quantitatively make the connection. We try to do a lot of work organically to try to, make sure we're trying to play the game there organically as much as we can, because the Google AdWords game in a crowded space, any software space, is a really difficult game, and you end up running. I mean, even at Global Software, I remember, we were running up the tab in certain situations, and it, wasn't fruitful, and we just cut the cost of it in a big way. And I go back and forth on that, but that's certainly, you mentioned, that's certainly an area that I think is overrated.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just to comment on that, because we sometimes make this analysis, I feel like the reason is that marketing gets scored on MQLs, and then they report on that, and then you can go show your Google Ads and you can say, well, we spent $50,000 last month and we got, 15,000 MQLs, which is hitting their target or whatever. But then if you would actually make the analysis of what happened to these 15,000 leads, you would realize that 1 turned into a customer, or 0 or 2. And
that's 100%. You're 100% right. It's all about the conversions. It's great. When you hear certain marketing folks, whether it's a trade show or, like you said, the Google ad, hey, I got all these MQLs, we got all these, I want to know what's the conversion ratio and how many of those are we converting and in what time frame. And that's really where the rubber meets the road on all that stuff. So I don't pay a lot. I'm not huge on, we're growing the MQLs and that's been growing and it's great. And I'm saying, well, but is it? Because remember, one of my things that one of my sayings, if you want to call it that, is and I got this from Jim Collins in Good to Great. I don't know if you ever read that book. You need to read that book. It's an amazing book for all the listeners out there, all the startup founders. If you're not reading Good to Great by Jim Collins, you're missing a huge education. But it's really my favorite business book. But the point is, what I tell people is, if you're not doing what you can be best in the world at, Finn, you are wasting your time, your investors' money, and you're going on a road to nowhere, because let's be honest, in every whatever space you're in, the top 1 or 2, if you're not the top 1 or 2 of a certain niche or a certain field or a certain market, what are you? What are you doing? You've got to be doing and executing on what you can be best in the world at. So don't come to me and tell me we can be best in the world at these 7 products. No, we can't. That's not possible. Very rare that you can be the best in the world at 7 different products in 7 different areas, and to try to be all things to all people. It just doesn't work. So the important point is to always have focus, because the problem with and you're wondering, okay, what's the connection to the MQLs? The connection is, if I'm out there in the market and I'm spend on Google AdWords or what I'm spending, and I'm getting tons and tons and tons and tons of all these MQLs, well, am I on multiple product lines in multiple disciplines? Am I spreading myself too thin? Because now I've got to chase these all down. I've got to chase them all down. Now it's watered down, it's diluted, and I'm taking my best resource, right? And I'm not focusing it, and I'm missing, when I drop the hammer, I'm missing that nail, or I'm hitting it sideways, because I'm not focused on doing what I'm best in the world at, because I've created all these MQLs, and some of it's garbage. Some of it's on product lines that I'm maybe not that strong at. I get into deals where now I've got to deliver some custom stuff instead of sell what we're best in the world at and we already have on the shelf. So these issues all come into play. There's a lot of gray there. And you've got to be able to decipher out, what are we really going to be the best in the world if we do A? Or because when we do B, we're the best in the world. I know that already. So my point to my team and to all the startup founders and other folks out there, I would tell them, you focus on what you're best in the world at, you'll win. If you get distracted with the new, shiniest thing out there, you will not be a success. The competition's too good. They're too good. And you just can't be fly by night about it. You've got to be all in on what you can be best in the world at and go for it. And that's really where you can make your hay.
How do you then think about, as you're growing and you're scaling and you're at 20 million, 40 million, you're trying to get to 50 million, 100 million. Generally, companies, when they think about, well, we need to grow revenue, they think about, well, we need to open up a new segment. We need to open up go into a new market. We need to build out a new product line that we can sell to our already existing customers. Does that then dilute what you're already really great at? And how do you then decide on what to add on to unlock that next stage of growth? Because if you would only just focus on what you figured out right now, what you're really good at, you would plateau.
No, that's a great point. I don't think that's an easy thing. I think it's not. I think it's one of the most underrated skills is to be able to know where you should grow, where's your next play, right? To your point, we can't just do one thing forever. I mean, some people actually have, some people do, but I think that being able to, I think one of the things is we ask a lot in private equity at our board meetings is, hey, should we build it or should we buy it? And I think when you're backed by private equity and you've got capital and they're looking to get somewhere quicker, you have to really think through that, because building, whatever your CTO tells you, just multiply that times 2 or 3 usually, and that's kind of what it's going to look like. And no offense to all the CTOs out there. I love ours, Jason Dobbs. Shout out to Jason Dobbs, best CTO in cyber. We love Jason Dobbs, and he's awesome in his team. But we have to be candid, things and honest with ourselves. There are curveballs. Things happen, right, that are out of our control. And sometimes you get the scope creep and things start to expand in a way that, or go sideways, however you want to call it. And we have to be prepared for that. So you really want to make sure before, if you have a great CTO like we do, who's exceptionally confident in his abilities, I can build that. I can build that. Get that 6-month boom. We're going to boom, 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 knock that out. This is going to be the best software in the world. And it might, but if I can go buy that, and I can not only buy the software, that's a proven success. So the GTM is proven. I'm getting customers that pay revenue. I'm getting a team around it that's proven. I mean, these are all the advantages that come with the acquisition game, or the tuck-in game, whatever you want to call it. These are the decisions that you have to look at, buy versus build. And private equity does it better than anybody or any industry in the world. They in technology, excuse me. And so I think I've learned a lot in that aspect of the game, and being able to understand when it's time to buy and when it's time to build is a critical feature. I think the board is really your board, for all you startup founders out there. Your board, you can't do it alone. You got a board out there who weighs in on these issues and bounces ideas off you to pressure test that question right there. Do we buy or build it? How much time is it going to take? How much is it going to cost us? Versus, hey, here's some acquisition prospects that do roughly the same thing in the area, and it makes it real easy if you've got an acquisition candidate that or an asset out there you're trying to buy that is number one in their respective space. Well, that you check that box. I mean, you're buying a company that's quote unquote doing what they're best in the world at. And so the question then is, what's the relation between the fact that they're best in the world at what they're doing and I'm best in the world at what I'm doing? And what I the litmus test I use is, are we selling to the same people and the same customers? When we look to buy a company, am I operating, am I going to buy this business, and are we just going to plug in what they're doing to our sales force? And are we able to sell to the same people and cross sells, upsells, et cetera, et cetera? Or is this a totally different person we're selling to? And is it a totally different customer? And if you're getting both, if you're checking those boxes that are different and different, you want to look closely at that. That's probably there. Maybe you could do better. Maybe you don't. Maybe you could do better. Maybe they have the right customers, but maybe not the same buyer. Maybe it's the same buyer, not the right customer. That would be better than not being able to check any of those boxes at all.
Makes sense. Last question, because I want to make sure that we end here on time. You guys, and I think you have to, bullet point this answer, because I think this could probably be a lot more. You guys sell into the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. What does it take to successfully sell into the enterprise?
Well, the first thing it takes is, I was always told it's better to be lucky than smart. So a lot of smart people, created a lot of great inventions, and never made it out of their garage. So I think it's important, you got to create your own luck out there in the market. Like I said, competition's stiff and it's uncompromising. And so I think being able to, it's all at the end of the day, humans, the technology is great. We got AI, we got ML, we got all these great things out there we're using. But at the end of the day, it's people versus people, people selling to people, people buying from people. And so it's a relationship game. And you don't have to have, what I've learned in 30 years, Finn, is you don't have to have the best product. You don't. You don't have to have the best product. You have to have a competitive product. It has to be competitive. It doesn't have to be the best, but you do have to be able to develop the best relationships. You do have to be able to develop the best trust from the person sitting across from you who's getting ready to make a decision whether to spend $500,000 or $1 million or $4 million over 4 years or whatever. You've got to have the ability to have in the sales process. You talk about selling. Now we sell to the Fortune, like you mentioned, PKWARE is in roughly 18 of the top 25 banks in North America. That's not a small feat. How do we do that? Is it because we got the greatest product ever? We're pretty damn good product. We really do. It works. We have great use cases around it. But more importantly, we got great people who have tremendous amount of credibility in the space, and they're able to develop relationships and get people to trust them because they've delivered. And to me, if I had to just,
how do you do that better than your competitors?
Well, I mean, I wish there was some, magic.
Any tricks, any hacks that you found?
And if I had tricks, I know my competitor is going to watch me on this, and because they look up to us in PKWARE, I know they're going to try to steal everything. So no, I'm not going to tell if we had a secret sauce. I'm not going to disclose that here. But I'll tell you this, Finn. There is no substitute for hard work. We got to be able to. You got to outwork your competitor in that particular discipline of developing relationships. Instead of sending an email, are you picking up the phone? Or people underestimate the power of the phone. Am I actually going on site? Am I going to go to a small rinky-dink town in the middle of the Midwest or the West Coast or the Southeast? Am I willing to do that for this deal, to develop this relationship? But again, it's all. I mean, we could do another whole hour on deal qualification. Should we even be playing in this deal? Do I have any business even trying to get this business here? Am I in here because I go back to, are we in an environment where I can be the best in the world at what we do? Or am I chasing something that I really am not the best in the world at, and my strategy is hope? I'm hoping I can get this opportunity to come around. That's not what you do. You got to play to your strengths. Like I said before, you double down on your strengths and you leave your weaknesses out the door. We do not work on weaknesses. I really feel this is a huge issue in commercial organizations, certainly in the software business, trying to get a weakness and make it mediocre. Why are you doing that? Why aren't we doing more of what we're great at and things around that greatness? That's what has to be focused on. not, well, we're really bad at this, so let's take a ton of resources away from what we're doing well, and let's try to make our weaknesses mediocre. So many people do that, and I don't understand why. And so maybe I'm an outcast or a maverick or people, I don't know. I don't understand that. I don't, as an operator, I don't believe it. If, sure, I'm not saying we don't try and innovate. You try new things and sometimes they work. And you try to have a strategy and some metrics around it so it can become successful and you have a measuring stick. But when something's not effective, you got to get rid of it quickly. And it becomes a weakness, and you're only as good as your weakest link on any team, in any space, in anything you do in the world. And so if this product line is weak, that's how good we are. At the end of the day, no, but Spencer, you're really killing it. I understand we're killing it here, but right here, this is where we're getting killed here. What are we doing about it? Okay. Why are we wasting time and resource and money on this? And that's one of my pet peeves as a software operator. And when I see stuff like that, it drives me crazy. And I don't do that. I try to stay away from that. I don't want to do that. I'm not an advocate of trying to work on, you want to work on weaknesses, hire a life coach or hire find a mentor or whatever and do that offline. We're in business to make money. It's not a not-for-profit. And unfortunately, you got to focus. You don't have the time. The competition's too good. They're just too good. And they're so uncompromising. No one feels sorry for you. Nobody feels sorry for me. Nobody feels sorry for PKWARE. They're going to eat our lunch if they're given the chance to do it. And so we've got to stay focused on what we're good at and keep the pedal to the metal in that area. And that's really at the crux of success, is focus and being able to make sure that you are doing all you can to play to your strengths. That will guarantee success in the long run.